Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Muhi Khwaja with the American Muslim Community Foundation, and today on the Muslim Philanthropy podcast, we have on Lina Ali, who is the Deputy Executive Director of the International Museum of Muslim Cultures. Welcome to the show, Lina.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me.
Wa alaikum assalam, of course. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about your background, and we'll have a good conversation around IMMC.
Sure. So I am an arts and culture producer, a museum professional. I am, as you mentioned, the Deputy Executive Director of the International Museum of Muslim Cultures, which is America's first Muslim museum. I have been a board member with the museum since 2014. I'm also a board member at the Palestine Museum in Connecticut. I guess the beginning of my career path into the art and culture world was with my work at Studio Basel, which is an award-winning creative arts firm that does a range of work from architecture and interior design to branding and museum consulting. Last year, I joined the museum as the Deputy Executive Director remotely from Philadelphia. So the museum is actually in Jackson, Mississippi. And yeah.
That's super exciting. So, what did you do in undergrad, or just like kind of your first few jobs that kind of got you on this path?
Yeah, so my undergrad's actually in business from St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia. And then when I joined Studio Basel, I was the marketing director, and we worked internationally in the Middle East, in Europe, in London. And certain projects sort of brought us into the art world. In 2010, we were hired by the government of the Sultanate of Oman to sort of develop and manage the 40th Independence Day anniversary sort of arts festival. So it was the largest arts festival that the country produced to celebrate this sort of emerging culture of artists in this very traditional country. And I had the wonderful opportunity to interact and consult with like over 100 artists from the country and to be immersed in this rich culture of the Omani people. And that sort of opened doors for more projects. A couple of years later, Studio Basel decided to produce a project, a social what's it called? Social responsibility project. Sorry, I'm losing my words. That basically was a photography initiative that leveraged social media and crowdsourcing to basically produce one of the largest modern collections of Islamic-themed photographs from over 60 countries. The images depicted art, architecture, culture, spirituality in this new light, so to speak, one of beauty and sophistication, not surrounded by war and terror, which is what we're usually used to seeing when we hear about the Muslim world. And this project was founded by Bassel al-Mashal, who is a United Nations Photographic Council member. And we had a jury that included top names in the photography world, such as Steve McCurry, which is National Geographic's photographer of the famous green-eyed Afghan girl on the cover of 1980 National Geographic, as well as Dr. Shahid Al-Alam, who is an amazing photographer from Bangladesh. You know him.
I've had the opportunity of meeting him through the Concordia Forum. And he's very inspiring. Yeah, his story. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and so that project actually brought us to the IMMC because the exhibition toured first in Kuala Lumpur at the Islamic Arts Museum. It was opened by the Sultan of Selangor, and then it went to Australia at the Islamic Museum in Australia, and then to London, where the mayor of London basically, it was the arts festival, the Eid festival that the mayor of London puts on every year, and we showcased the exhibit there. And then when we brought it to the United States for the first time, it showed at the IMMC. And so that's where my relationship with the IMMC sort of solidified, and I became part of their team.
Awesome. So, you've been in Philly for undergrad, and did you grow up in Philly as well?
I did. So I grew up in Philly. That's where I completed my first degree. Then I got married and moved to London, where my husband was working on his PhD at the time. And that's when we moved to the Middle East, where we worked on these projects that I mentioned previously. But then in the past few years, we've returned back to the United States. I started a master's program. I just completed a master's program at Harvard
Congrats.
University.
Wow.
Thank you, in museum studies, so that I could sort of further this sort of new and growing passion for art and museums.
How wonderful. And it's like the perfect combination of, your experience and, going to an institution like Harvard, I think will really even open up more doors on top of that. So it's really exciting to see you match your skill set and passion and be able to do something every day that kind of builds on that. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. It does make sense, sort of. I never imagined that I would go to school for museum studies. I'm an entrepreneur naturally, and I always thought that I would want to do an MBA and be more in the business world. But I am managing, so I love that part, and I love the arts. I always did. I married an artist, so it all makes sense, and it just works very well. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. That's great to hear. So, tell us a little bit more about the International Museum of Muslim Cultures, its history, when it started. You shared when you interjected into that timeline as well, but why don't you take us back to maybe the founding of IMMC?
Yeah, absolutely. So the IMMC was founded in December of 2000. So that means we are celebrating our 20th anniversary later this month. And we are having a huge gala that I invite all of your listeners to. Inshallah, it will be a virtual event to celebrate the 20th anniversary of America's first Muslim museum. So a small group of Jackson, Mississippians responded to an international exhibit that was touring and visiting the city of Jackson called the Majesty of Spain. And interestingly enough, this blockbuster production was completely leaving out 700 years of Muslim civilization in Spain. So they did not mention anything about Al-Andalus, Andalusia. And so our co-founders, Mr. Ahmad al-Turk and Mrs. Okola Rashid, who attended the same mosque at the time, took it upon themselves to sort of gather a group of community members and to create their own exhibit that would show alongside this international touring exhibit. And that was the start of the IMMC, which it's just a wonderful idea. And you would never think that America's first Muslim museum would come out of the small city of Jackson, Mississippi. So it's a wonderful treasure for country. And I realize that not everyone is able to visit Jackson to see this museum. So with this event in December, and on December 30th, and also we have a webinar coming up, by the way, on December 17th, next Thursday, in partnership with MPAC, the Muslim Public Council, MPAC.
Affairs Council, yeah.
Muslim Public Affairs Council, to sort of let more people know about the museum and what we're doing. So our mission is very simple, as we are dedicated to educating the public about Islamic history and culture and about the contributions of diverse Muslim communities to the world. And we want everybody to know about us. And subhanAllah, with COVID and with everything going virtual this year, we have the opportunity to reach more people. And we hope that you'll get to know us more and interact with us through these online programs, and especially join us for our gala, which is also a fundraising event. Yeah.
Of course. I think that will really provide people a great opportunity to learn more. And I'm glad that you're doing webinars, and we'd love to do another webinar with you in the future as well to kind of cross-promote AMCF and IMMC as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to continue to build partnerships across the country. And I do definitely encourage everyone to check out your gala that's coming up. Where can people find more information specifically about the event?
Sure. So everything is on our website, and it's very simple. It's muslimmuseum.org. So if you go to muslimmuseum.org, you'll see on the top banner, we have the link for the gala, which you can click on and register for the event. You can also go to muslimmuseum.org/gala directly, and that'll take you to the app that we are going to be showcasing the gala on. And please join our mailing list. We often send out newsletters through Constant Contact to keep in touch and let you know what we are up to.
Of course. So I want to talk a little bit more about what advice do you have for people interested in going into museum studies, and what can they do to just try to have a better experience and get their foot in the door?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing would be to sort of choose an area in museums where you think you fit in or where you can best project your talents and skills. So whether it's in education, teachers might decide that they want to go into more broader effect type of education and join a museum. Whether you can, if you're more into the arts, the curatorial department is something that people are definitely interested in. Some folks are more into design and development of exhibitions. If you're more creative and can do your if you're good at designing, and then there's business and management, sort of where I kind of tied in to museums. But you need to have some basic experience that combines curatorial education and design before you get into a more managerial position. But museums are open to everyone. And there's also volunteer opportunities for docents, people that are interested in learning about a museum and sharing whatever they can. You can, find your local museum, whatever topic you're passionate about, whether it's history, science, art, and ask to be a volunteer. And that can give you a taste of it. And you can decide if you want to, move forward with that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I appreciate the most about museums are, aside from the artwork and the curation of everything, are the docents and the volunteers who give the tours, right? I think even for me, when I was in the University of Michigan, non-art related, I was a tour guide at the university, so maybe I just have an affinity for people who do that. But I would always try to have as many museum memberships as possible to support here in the Bay Area or back in Detroit. And now that things are virtual, where do you kind of see the opportunity for people to engage with museums across the country or even across the world?
Yeah, well, the same thing. It's basically signing up to whatever museum you're interested in and getting on their list. And there are tons of virtual programs going on these days, and you can sort of pick and choose what you want to be to participate in, what you want to learn. And you mentioned something wonderful, actually, with your experience, is that for people that are more people and that want to interact with visitors and with audiences, then the docents and the frontline folks are very important people, and they are the ones you will remember once you leave the museum. So the curatorial folks are in the background, the conservationists that are taking care of our historic pieces are all in the background. But yeah, the docents are the front face. And if you like art and people or history and people, then that's the first step for you.
Sure. And then I know you mentioned Art Basel. Is that the same museum that's in Miami, or are they globally have dozens of offices? Because I'm just familiar with the art show in Miami that they put on.
So I said Studio Basel.
Ah, okay.
And we have that name that correlates. We were at Art Basel last year, actually, and it is a fair, an annual fair that does show in Switzerland, in Basel, Switzerland, in Hong Kong,
Gotcha.
and in Miami. Yeah, but no, Studio Basel is its own. It's its own entity that like I said, it covers everything from Islamic art to museum consulting.
Gotcha. And then in terms of just advice that you have for, challenges and things that you see in the nonprofit world, you're in this unique position of, being an executive director for a museum, and also just kind of seeing best practices. So whether it's from the nonprofit side or from the museum side, what are some things that you'd like to share as challenges or things that you feel have been done really well?
So I think all nonprofits and perhaps all museums will agree with me that fundraising is a big deal. Not everyone is good at fundraising. That's definitely not my forte. And I would rather give that to someone else to do. And a lot of the larger museums have the capability to hire professional fundraisers. But when you're as small as we are, and a lot of the American museums are small, very small organizations that are run by only a few folks, where the executive director is also the curator and is also the finance manager, and is really wearing several hats. So fundraising is a big deal. There are public grants that we apply for, but the competition is huge. I mean, it's the whole United States, and it's difficult. We are hoping with this gala coming up on December 30th that we will engage the public audiences to, help with fundraising in whatever small way they can. But yeah, we do rely on these larger grants from the state and from the federal government. I would say another thing is breaking into social media, which we are still working on. I think social media is very crowded these days, and you need to get the attention of people that will become your audience and will become your future investors and support the museum.
Yeah, I think, and definitely, part of that is being able to tell the story. And I think having the exhibit on Muslim cultures provides a very unique opportunity to do that. And I was just looking at some stats, and in 2019, Americans gave roughly $450 billion. And I know you said that, this is not including federal funding or state funding, but just from corporations and foundations and individuals. But in terms of funding that actually gets to the arts, it's only $21 billion, which is still a significant amount of money, but comparatively to the whole, it's not as much as we would like to see. And then I think being a Muslim museum as even a subset of that, if Muslims are 1% of the population in the US, you're looking at $2 million that hopefully should be directed to Muslim causes, right? But you could probably make an argument that probably, it might happen through the combination of foundations like Doris Duke's or, all the other opportunities out there. But, what's your take on Muslim-led nonprofits engaging in these spaces of philanthropy a little bit more?
That's a great point, Muhi, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, because when Muslims think of philanthropy and their zakat and their charity, they're often sending their money to war-torn countries or to support yatim, the orphans,
Sure.
or refugees, and that's perfect. That's definitely understandable. So the arts and culture are probably never thought of, and if they are, it's that tiny 1%. So it is difficult for us to sort of engage Muslim donors. So that's why, like I said, most of our funding is coming from these nonprofit organizations, foundations, and the government. So I would really love to see more Muslims sort of pay attention to this topic, because it is important. I understand there are other priorities, but what we are doing essentially is, and I strongly believe this from when Bassett and I co-founded the Spirit of Ramadan, which was the photography exhibition, is that by sharing beautiful art from Muslims, by Muslims, of the Muslim world, it doesn't even have to be Muslims, that we can help. dispel misunderstanding. We can help get rid of some aspect of Islamophobia, because I feel that
Totally.
it's a neutral sort of space that most people understand, they appreciate, they respect, and it would give us that opportunity to say, hey, we also have beautiful art and culture. We have something sophisticated to share. It's not just poverty and war and being run out of our countries.
Definitely. And, I think even if we kind of try to shift the culture of zakat and sadaqah, right, and look into how this type of education serves as people understanding Islam in a different way, could that be seen as one of the 8 categories of zakat? And how do we reframe that discussion on a national level across the country? And people are always going to have their preferences, just like you said, about helping, in their minds, they think that the poor or the orphan, and rightfully so, there are people that are struggling and can't make ends meet, and there's such a issue of poverty in the entire world. But even here in the United States, we see those same issues as, developing countries across the country do as well. And there's a unique opportunity for philanthropy to step in and provide that difference, where the government only has so much resources, and there's a whole argument that can be made that the government should reallocate those resources. Maybe there shouldn't be as much emphasis on foreign aid as there is, in the United States. And there's so many things that could be done to boost the American people. But I think philanthropy provides that extra opportunity to make that difference. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and hope to continue to learn more about the International Museum of Muslim Cultures. I think it's great, fantastic work that you're doing there, and really encourage everybody to learn more. And like you said, they can visit muslimmuseum.org to do that. Any final thoughts that you want to share?
Yeah, so thank you again for having me. I wanted to make a small point about what we were just speaking about, that recently
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of imams or sheikhs say that it could be sadaqah jariyah when you donate to these sort of institutions. It doesn't necessarily have to be an art institution per se, but anything that is educating on Islam is worthwhile, worth thinking about to sort of prioritize your charity. So yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate having had this opportunity with you. And please do visit us at muslimmuseum.org, register, sign up for the gala. It will be a show of art and culture, live art demonstrations, musical performances. We also have the IMMC Excellence Awards. This year is going out to the Muhammad Ali Center, which we're very proud of. And it hopefully will be a wonderful show, and we'd love to see you all.
Great. I'm going to sign up right now, so I'm
Wonderful.
doing it. Yeah. Again, Lina, thank you so much for being on, and it's been a real pleasure chatting with you.
Same here. Thank you.